interesting location in Africa, not often spoken about, and using palm leaves, dried palm leaves to make bags and other products. Very interesting topic, and this is why I want to introduce a wonderful guest today, Zinzi de Brouwer, who is the founder of the company Pannier, and she's going to explain exactly what it's all about. So welcome to my channel. I'm Jacqueline Shaw. I'm the African Fashion Business Coach, and this is Fashion Africa Voices. Welcome to my channel. Zinzi, first of all, please, I know I've completely ruined your name, so please tell me how do you say your name. I say Zinzi de Brouwer, but please, how do you say it?
Well, Zinzi you said correctly, and Zinzi de Brouwer.
De Brouwer. See, I need to get this.
Yeah.
So it's a Dutch name, and your heritage is Dutch and Mozambican, is that correct?
Yeah, I was born in Mozambique and I was raised in between both countries.
Wonderful. So now you started this company, again, I know I've got the word wrong, Pannier, please say.
Pannier, yes.
Ah, there you go. So coming across this now, first of all, let's talk a little bit about your background before we get into the company, because you've got an amazing, interesting background in regards to your work with African fashion, culture, trends. Tell us a bit more about that so we can put a bit of foundation behind who you are for those who don't know you.
Well, my academic background stems from a very kind of fashion perspective. So I actually did fashion design as a bachelor many, many years ago, worked a few years in between, and then did my master's in fashion strategy. And both I did in the Netherlands. Within that, I quickly started to feel the urgency of moving away of what we, tend to create in fashion, which is kind of a very kind of egocentric form of how designers operate within the system. And I was not interested in that. And also with all my experiences in Mozambique and kind of my humble background and everything that I took with me from there, I started to feel the urgency, but also the responsibility to do much more than that. And I started to quickly become very interested in trend forecasting as a medium to really get to insights and kind of also raising questions on where the fashion industry is heading and how can we actually solve the very main issues when it comes to carbon footprint and how we kind of treat the planet, but also people. And I found many answers in the continent. So in that sense, trend forecasting started to become more of a medium. And with my work experiences, I started to really expand to more kind of in a brand and marketing communication direction. And then I came to my social project in Mozambique, which is really kind of coming from passion and a very deep personal interest in connecting Mozambique to kind of the wider scope of art, design, and fashion.
That's awesome. So tell us about this company. So we got the background, your why, and the passion towards it, and obviously a link to your heritage and the sustainability side of it, which is amazing and definitely one up my street. So that's why I felt totally in love with it when you started this, and why I've asked to do this interview with you. So please tell us about what the process of it. Like I mentioned earlier about the dried palm leaves, which is where the word Pannier comes from. I've already said that correctly. I'll get the money into this interview. But where the word comes from. Tell us about that, why you chose that material, the products that you make, and the people that you work with to make that.
Yeah, so it really stems from a locality in Mozambique, which is very much far removed from the urban settings. So I was born and raised in Maputo, and I used to go to Yamban quite a lot as a little girl, and I grew up there, kind of spending my holidays. And Palha, as a kind of artistic resource, has already been very much at the foundation of the arts and crafts kind of markets of Mozambique. So it was always there. It was always in our homes. We took it to the Netherlands when we eventually moved here. So it was a very kind of natural progression with something that was always very much part of my daily life, because the items that have been kind of originated are actually homeware items. So they kind of make part of your everyday living. And I found this such a beautiful connection, because the little town where it all stems from, which is actually a village, and it's in a peninsula, and it's about 500 k's away from Maputo, and it's quite difficult to reach. It's called Linga Linga, and this is where you find the female artisans, but also really a village that is centered around the weaving of this material, which grows in vast numbers over the coast of Mozambique. And so it was quite of a natural progression to kind of use this material as a foundation. And the women have already formed an association together. And it was also, again, a very natural progression, because I started to question where everything stems from and how did they learn these weaving techniques, and how has it become such an embedded kind of, almost like a source of interaction, social interaction, and also part of everyday life of the village, because everyone does it, not only the women, but all children grow up doing it. And so you see, when you're in the village, everyone is doing it as they speak, as they cook, as they clean, and it's such a beautiful part of daily life.
Can you explain what exactly you talk us through the process of what they're doing and how it gets to the end product? Be good to know a bit more.
Right. So it's kind of a very circular approach, which is quite interesting, especially if you deal with kind of designing for the circular economy, which is something I'm very interested in. So it grows autonomously in the region. It's very difficult to kind of capture, because it grows in the wild, and the women have to wake up very early in the morning before it starts getting hot, before snakes start popping up.
Okay.
And it's quite labor intensive. They need good tools to kind of cut the stems. Then they kind of dry these leaves in the sun, so there's no chemicals involved. The sun bleaches the leaves naturally. And then they kind of strip it and cut it and refine it and start weaving with it. And so this they all do by themselves, and even kind of the arts or the crafts themselves they generate themselves. So it's a very kind of it's a huge cultural kind of perspective on how these crafts are developed. My incentive with my social enterprise was to kind of intervene a little bit in the scenario, intervene it in the positive sense, because first of all, I started to see that, well, to be honest, Mozambique is not on the global map when it comes to art, design, or fashion. And because, right.
There is a fashion week, the Maputo fashion. They do it.
Yeah, there is Maputo Fashion Week, and there's a lot of talent coming from the country, and nowadays a lot is happening. But let's say 10 years ago, it wasn't happening as much. And so there was a huge opportunity for me to kind of see how I could try to elevate these craft products to a design level. But also what was very interesting for me, and which is something that I've been doing ever since my childhood, is try to connect both worlds. Okay. So I saw a huge opportunity to bring in designers to come with me, and in this, really kind of natural, very secluded environment, and work with these women during what I call design residencies. So it's really kind of honoring the time it takes to, first of all, make these products, but also the time it takes to get to know one another and to really create an exchange on a kind of really fundamental level, where craft and the handiwork only serves as a mere medium to almost develop deeper insights on what it means to exchange in culture and what it means to exchange in language. And, you know, these women, they're all in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and they have, yeah, and they, you know, they're kind of the matriarch of their village, and also in a way the matriarch of this project. And so, and these designers that I bring in are, you know, very talented designers who are extremely open to kind of new perspectives. Yes. So you start to generate a lot of new kind of approaches to what design or fashion can do. And that for me is the interesting part. So it really extends beyond the product level. And of course, then Palha as a natural resource starts to, is a center point, but we tackle a lot of other kind of design approaches. So the last time we worked a lot with indigo and embroideries, and we really try to extend the project, and we look at also at the interests of the, excuse me, we look at the interests of the women and the designers, and it's a very kind of open-end approach to things.
Wow. So I'm just curious about it being women.
Yeah.
Is it just something that's just always been done by the women, or was it done by men before, do you know? Or why is it now just, well, it sounds like it's just the women. Maybe, just curious, just a short explanation on that.
Yeah, it's mostly women doing it, but there are a few men that do it as well, and they're a bit harder to reach. I've tried to do my research on it. Yeah, because there's also the question of kind of passing on these traditions and these techniques, which was also kind of why I use the word intervention, because the younger generation is not that interested in adopting it, which is very understandable because they are called to city life and, you know, they have big dreams. And that's also kind of one of the reasons why I started this project, because I mean, Mozambique as a country, now it's happening more, but that kind of valuing how the creative industry can actually be an economic driver and can create jobs and can create kind of social meaning to people is not so, it's not put high on the agenda. And through this project, I wish to contribute that in Mozambique and show that it can be, and it can be a driver for the local economy. And so, and of course my interest, or well, for me, it was quite natural to work with women, and especially when you deal with gender equality issues, you know, in a country such as Mozambique.
So the product now, so you said it's kind of already been linked to homeware. I know I've seen the bag products you made, and maybe expand on what it is what's the end product that is coming from these leaves and this method of weaving and so forth.
So from the start, I was very much focused on this end product, and quickly started to understand that where I was getting my most fulfillment and more interesting insights was out of the process. So now it's a very process-oriented kind of design residency that we create. So that's why it's also open-end. And of course, we try to kind of conceive products out of it, but it's not the main objective. And the products that do come out of it are almost prototypes and kind of question marks that will lead up to the next development of products. And what we have now been mostly focused on is homeware. So really staying close to the nature and the origin of kind of the crafts, which is really basketry, weavery, baskets, things to use at home. And again, being part of that everyday living, which is for me really interesting. Yeah.
That's cool. I love it. So you're showing some pictures along this video, and just some of the gorgeous things that you've been making, or the women have been making, and you've been working with them on, just such vast talent. This is why I just fell in love with Africa in the beginning, in general, if I can generalize the continent in that, in the sense of the crafts that I've seen go to multiple countries. The skill level is just high, but I see what you're doing is helping to bring some consistency, helping to explore what is already existing, rather than trying to add something new, but exploring what can be done, what new opportunities, and preservation as well of that craft.
Absolutely, yeah.
So with the design residencies, then from Mozambique, or the international people who will come and work with
Both.
the women?
Both. Yeah.
Both. Okay. Even
yeah.
better.
Yeah, it's very much open to whoever is interested and who wants to join.
So with that, so are you selling the end products now, or are you still in a position of growth, of exploration of the ideas?
So we were really kind of, luckily we've been able to keep this going through subsidies, and because it's run by subsidies, again, it's very much process oriented. Mm-hmm. So no, we're not selling in big quantities at the moment, although we are selling, for example, if a designer wants to use them as part of their fashion show, or for galleries, we have already kind of sold a few pieces. Because what I've noticed is that, you know, these design residencies are a minimum of 3 weeks. Sometimes we stay, you know, up to 2 months. And there is just so much kind of dedication, time, and energy placed in making these products. And the value of it becomes invaluable. And it becomes really difficult to see it as almost like a commodity and something to, you know, to be sold. And what I really want to do with this project is tell the stories through the products. But of course, we're always open to kind of seeing, you know, larger opportunities. And I mean, it will never come to a point where it will be mass produced, but that's also not what I want to do.
It goes against what you're
right. It goes against the values, and there's only so much the women can do. But of course, it does create kind of an entryway for people to know what these women are doing, so people can actually just access these women directly and kind of order whatever it is that they want from these women directly. And these are kind of the paths that I want to open.
So being, though you were born in Mozambique and you grew up for many years in I was going to say in the West, which was a weird term, but you have been growing up outside of Africa for quite a long time. And how have you found working? I mean, have you always been going back to Mozambique? So there's a familiarity there, or have you had much challenges or struggles working with the creators and the artisans and the skilled women?
Well, I grew up in Mozambique as well, so I spent part of my childhood there, and as an adult I was also living there for a few years. So I consider myself very much Mozambican, and I've always gone back there, and I know the language and I know the culture, and so working with these women has been not only a blessing, but it's just such a kind of a natural and an easy way to get in touch with my heritage. So in that aspect, of course, there are a lot of challenges that come with working and operating in Mozambique. But yeah, that's kind of a general thing when it comes to dealing with the African continent, unfortunately.
But if there was, like, from what you've been learning now, from what you've been from working with them, and you mentioned about the desire to tell stories, what would you say are the, let's say, 3? I know I'm pulling this question out that you haven't seen before, but 3 big stories, not like a whole story, but like themes of stories that you'd like to really come out of this video for people to say, oh, there's this associated with Mozambique, or there's, I don't know, what would be the 3 main themes that you'd like to come out of this?
Associated with Mozambique, or with
the work that you're doing with this particular project, working with this material and with these women?
Well, I think first and foremost, the value of the human hand, the meaning of the human hand, of the human behind the product, and kind of the whole ethical nature that starts to arise when that is so kind of socially intensive. and also the work that is put in the product, and like I said, the dedication and the time. It takes a long time. It's strenuous for the body. So you start to deal with very kind of different values and approaches to creating something. And I think I really want to contest what is happening in the fashion industry, which is so much about mass production and kind of the whole throwaway culture. And in this sense, you're creating such a pure product from nature that eventually can be put back into nature. And you're kind of skipping so many steps of a kind of a traditional supply chain. So I think the value of the human hand plays a very, very big role. Again, addressing time as a dimension on how, when you immerse yourself in a natural environment where there is no technology, there is no kind of social media, there is just nature around you and a community of people who depend on one another, and such a beautiful integration between expats and locals, you really start to kind of, you get stripped away from all the hustle and bustle of what it is living in a city and being caught up in so many kind of distractions. So you start to become more, you get to the core of things, and it really starts to kind of, it forces you to ask questions about, what matters to you and what drives you. And and that's why these design residencies are so special, because people go there. And this is also one of the biggest incentives of the project, is I really wanted to turn around the story, because what we try to do as creatives from Africa is we really want the stories to be on a global kind of platform, because we want to inspire and we want to be better understood, and we want fears that are associated with the continent. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to have an open invitation to going there and seeing things for yourself, and even better, create stories for yourself together with creatives from there, and not always frame it in kind of the Western framework, which is, we're so used to doing that. We're so used to kind of matching our creativity to what kind of the global consensus is of quality and design and kind of, and this is a way to stand alone and to not have to lean on the Western perspective.
I love it. I mean, you're speaking my language. It's about, the African lens. Why not? Everything seems to be, it's the standard is the West, the way things are done in Europe, in America, in just the global West. The way things are done seems to be the standard. But why? And that is challenging that, is disrupting that, is what you're doing, and making people think outside the box. So I love that. Yeah. And talking about the whole, the African lens, or the way of seeing, your work with, going back to your work with, you had your own trend company before. You've worked within trend for, some big organizations as well for fashion and Africa as well. So you've been very much involved in that whole scene. What's some of the biggest lessons or understandings that you gained about Africa from a trend perspective, from an African story? Like, what is the messages that you think? I was probably like, I'm opening up a can of worms. There's probably so many, but maybe you've seen of late, because I know I've seen a lot of things. But what have you been seeing? If you've still got your trend mindset on, could you share some of the things that you've seen from an African trend perspective or lens?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because there's a reason why I kind of let go of that kind of entrepreneurial embodiment of a trend studio, because what I experienced was that it was just too ahead of its time. And as much as I was trying to do this, which I still find very valuable, it wasn't aligning with what the rest of the industry is going through. And I still don't feel it is. And it will be at a certain point. But I think, right. And I think also the kind of definition of trend needs to change. So it's not really much about trends as it is more about kind of movements and eras, really, into which Africa is transitioning in and is already transitioned in. And I think for a long time with the Trend Studio, I was very much preoccupied with creating a platform for new narratives and giving space to others. And what I overlooked, and this is a little bit of a self-critical area spot, is that it is up to the creatives themselves to create that space for themselves. I cannot have that responsibility to do so, and it needs to come from a very kind of personal. And it forced me to see that as much as, you want to create alliances and you want to create kind of a unity, there's also a danger in that, because again, you are starting to water down the perspective and putting it under one whole. And as much as there is one whole, we are still individuals and we are still very different from one another.
Wow.
So I thought that was a really big insight for myself, because for so long I was struggling with how can we align ourselves? How can we become powerful? And of course we are powerful as a collective, and we can do so in different ways. But I think when it comes to really manifesting new narratives, I think we all need to kind of find our own responsibility within that. And like I said, the whole trend kind of approach, you can look at the continent in a very trend-oriented way, and then social innovation starts to become really important, because all the kind of solutions to what we are encountering in the fashion industry here in the West, we can find those solutions in Africa, I believe. And this can be seen in very different ways. It can be seen in kind of the artisan level, so how products are being made, but also in terms of infrastructure and creating kind of, again, the stripping down of all the noise and just getting to what is actually necessary, and not dealing with chemicals, not dealing with anything that is toxic to the environment. I feel these are all the things that are happening already in the continent, and more attention needs to be paid to that. And also how kind of design and fashion, how the transaction works between, let's say, a client and a provider or a company or a brand. There, the social aspect is so important, the getting to know one another, really including the client into your story, the personalization, the customization. I mean, these are all kind of...
that's a trend, customization.
Absolutely.
And that personal difference.
And you see how huge brands, Western brands, are struggling with this because they want to reach their customer and they don't know how. And in Africa, it's already part of kind of the nature of transaction. It's already there. So yeah, in that aspect, there are still very interesting things happening.
Wow. No, you've you're preaching and you're teaching. So thank you. This is more than what I expected. But I really appreciate it. So where's now? What's your vision? Whatever you can share, what vision do you have, or where are you going? What's next steps for the business for Studio Palha?
Yeah, I think I'm taking it at a very slow pace. I've noticed that that's what I'm comfortable with, and I can still be ambitious and still realize, big dreams, but at a slow pace. And that's what I've learned most from it. And also being a mother, of course, demands other priorities.
You can imagine.
But I'm still very much committed to aligning with other creatives. I do still a lot of brand direction for African brands. I help brands from the Netherlands wanting to connect more with the African continent and how to do that in a kind of ethical way, in a meaningful way. So all these values are seeped into my everyday work experiences. And alongside that, I'm also developing a web shop, a sustainable web shop, where all the clothing kind of is made in West Africa. And I feel that this is a gap in the market, because there's still this idea on sustainability is still, you know, very, very niche, especially working with African tailors and artisans. So yeah, I encourage, sorry?
I was just saying, one of my pet peeves, and I do say to the brands that those who come to me in the same way they want to start in Africa, or they're doing it, is stop saying that you're an ethical brand because you make in Africa. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, it's not enough. You need to critically look at your product and how it's made. So it's for me, it's still a huge gap in the market, and I encourage everyone who sees this to tap into it, because it's a huge opportunity, and it will give you the longevity that a lot of brands are missing out on, and trying to kind of cover up with greenwashing. Eventually, but eventually
that one now, yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's a challenge, and what I say is that the smaller brands have more authority or more power in the sense of being an ethical brand, of putting those aspects into their brand, or being able to say, all right, we want to just use eco dyes, we can explore that. Yes, the finances may not be as much there, but they've got the opportunity to do it because it's a smaller scale. When the bigger brands now, they've already got a setup, which is already a fast fashion setup. It's set up to take from the environment, to take and to pollute and all of this. Now they've got to go back and remodel their business. Now they've got to look at ethnic, now they've got to look at the print, now they've got to look at the textile, but they're still using polluting textiles. They're still using, you know, they're still creating a lot of waste, but they're trying to now put a plaster over something that it is if you understand what I'm saying, it's kind of crazy, but it's more easier to an extent when you're a smaller brand. So
absolutely.
You can do more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, it's really difficult to reach 100% sustainable brand. I mean, it's extremely difficult, but I think if you are already taking this on board at the start of the creation of your products, and you try to have as much grip as possible on your supply chain, I think you're already making huge steps that indeed big brands aren't even able to make. So it's definitely feasible, and it's really it's a lot about kind of being inventive and trying to look at it from different perspectives, which is something that I really try to do. And I think a part of it is also kind of educating yourself on what is possible and what is out there.
So next steps, you said the web shop is amazing. Any tips, any advice for those, from your experience of what you've done, for what you haven't, you shared so much, goodness, I can get so much from this myself, like wow. But any kind of advice, tips, learnings, don't do's, do-do's that you'd like to share just to end this interview, for those who may be wanting to set up some kind of social project or their own label in Africa or in Mozambique, whatever you'd like to share that you'd like others to know to end this interview?
Well, I think it's really important to do the research, and that means really getting in there. And I mean, the way that I set up my project was based on a lot of ethnographic research that I did myself. And this is coming from someone who already knew a lot about Mozambique. But I think the level of research and kind of this anthropological side is so important to also create more of a connection. And I think it's really important to have a very kind of democratic overview on how you work together with others, and realizing that as much as you are running things or you're managing things, you want to give voice to others, because that's also how you're going to create more meaning, but also more insights into how it can help you. And you know, it's just a shame that sometimes brands will use kind of the whole African narrative as kind of a marketing tool and not really dive into it, because you're just missing out on a whole richness of knowledge, but also kind of alienating people that can really be meaningful to your business.
Yeah.
So I think that's so important. It's so important to, and I think that's also where the money should go in. I think the economic resources and energy should also go into getting to know the people you're actually working with and that you're kind of being inspired by. And I hope to see more of that. I think it's such a valuable opportunity, not to only gain knowledge, but also to align yourself and to help your business grow.
Awesome. I mean, like I said to you at the beginning of this, well, before we started this interview, and I was saying the whole them and us kind of narrative, you know, Africa is this and we are that, and, you know, this whole division. What would you think the women, I mean, being Mozambican yourself, or, you know, what would you think the women would want others to know about Mozambique? And I'll jump there in a minute, but I'll jump on a plane to go there in a minute.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, your pictures.
Oh, that's so difficult because
what would they, in fact, they're older than you and I. They are their culture, they are their heritage, they literally are their heritage. They are the matriarchs, like you're saying. What would you think their message would be to others about their country?
I mean, it's difficult because I don't want to put words in their mouth. But from what I know of them at a personal level, and we've had a lot of these conversations throughout our working sessions and our socializing sessions, what I grasp from them is that they just, you know, they live a very simple life. And these are women that have been through a lot. They've been through civil wars and kind of getting rid of all the colonialist ramifications, you know, and not to mention all their personal situations. I think it's living through this simplicity and being so fulfilled by weaving and by just, you know, being at peace and having space to do so. And when we get together, what they most love about this project is the recognition they get, is just kind of like giving them a platform and honoring them and saying to them through this project, what you do is really important and really special. And I think that's all they want, and that's all they kind of long for in our communications and in our kind of when we reach one another. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing about it. And I think they're also they're proud women. When we're there, they always want to introduce their home. They want to introduce their family. You know, that's the Mozambican way of doing things. You give everything that you have. You cook, you offer food, you give presents, you sing, you dance. So it's such a kind of you know, with the little that there's just so much love and giving.
There's such a strong message in that, especially, you know, in today's kind of life that we're living in, where everything is so much about me, and I mean, like, me, the I, and being so caught up in just doing, just going for the sake of going, running for the sake of running, forgetting about other people. And it just sounds like it's just about simplicity of reconnecting with humanity, just the simple things of humanity, just to feel loved, just to be loved, just to give love. Absolutely. And doing that in the most simplest way. You don't need all the extras. And that's what I see, because even the products I see, you haven't fussed with them. It's just I mean, maybe there's more that I haven't seen that is a bit more fussy. For what I have seen is the simplicity of the product is all about the craft. It's all about the craft. And you've kept it all about the craft. You kept it about the simplicity of the product. And I think that in itself is saying the same message that you're saying right now. And that is going to resonate throughout what I've seen and throughout what hopefully what others will get. Keeping things simple. So thank you, and Zinze, thank you for sharing this product and this project, and the women. If you show them this video, tell them that I said thank you for doing what they're doing and for letting us share their message through you.
Thank you for the opportunity to share my story.
Oh bless! I'll be definitely tagging a lot of people on this to hear this, so they can spread more. It definitely is one to share. So thank you very much. So you shared about the company. Where can people find more about the company, about you? How can people get in touch? I will put below
we
that.
have our Instagram link, which you'll put up, and also my personal website, which kind of gives an overview of the projects that I do and the companies that I work with. Yeah, you can always get in touch with me via email. All my contact details are on the website. So yeah.
Perfect. I'll be below the video. You guys go check them out. Thank you, Zinze. Guys, remember, subscribe to this channel. Remember, so every week, every Thursday is a new video coming out, and you can hear more stories, see what more people are doing on the continent, hear some trainings from me, see highlights from the things I've been doing, and be part of the changing narrative of the African story in fashion. Thank you so much, Zinze, and all the best.